Yotterashai mitterashai. Yamishibai no jikan da yo. Hi, I'm Mikaela, and this is Love Mikaela, a podcast where I talk about literally anything and everything that I want to. It is almost Halloween, and so I decided to tell some spooky stories for today's podcast. I got the idea while I was watching this anime, and it's basically an anthology of a bunch of like bite-sized spooky stories. And so I thought I'd talk about that, and I would retell some of the stories for you guys. So the anime is called Theater of Darkness Yamishibai. It's actually a word play on the Japanese word kamishibai. Shibai is like a play basically, and kami means paper. So kamishibai is like a paper play sort of. Imagine like if you were seeing a puppet show being done like on the street somewhere, like back in the olden days, and they have those little like, it's like a mini theater, almost like a little tiny box. They would in Japan in the olden times, they would have one of those little boxes, and then they would put sheets of like paper with pictures on it through the box, so you'd be looking at the picture, and then they'd have a narrator telling the story like next to or behind the picture. Sort of like if you're reading like a picture book with some kids or something, you use the pictures as an aid to tell the stories, kind of like that. So Yamishibai is a play on Kamishibai, which is what I just explained. Yami means like darkness, so it's like darkness play. That's why the English title is Theater of Darkness. And so it's done in the same, like the animation is done in the same style sort of as a Kamishibai. It's mostly like static backgrounds, and then like sometimes the characters will move a little bit, like their facial expression might change, or they might like, if they were reaching for something, you'd see like their arm move. But it's very like simple animation and kind of simple art, I guess. Not in a bad way, just like the focus is more on like the storytelling of it, which is really fun. And they're all spooky stories. There's 11 seasons so far. The 11th season came out pretty recently, I think a few months ago, and each episode is only about 4 minutes. There's about 12 to 13 episodes per season, so it's about an hour-ish or a little under an hour to watch a whole season. And they're really fast, but honestly, some of the stories, they don't feel like 4 minutes when you're watching it. Like I felt like I was watching like a 10-15 minute thing, but they're all 4 minutes. It's kind of crazy. Something that I thought was pretty cool is the 9th season was about the like zodiac animals, like the Chinese zodiac. I thought that was really cool. They had like each animal had their own episode. I haven't watched that season yet. I've only gotten through I think the first 3.5, 4 seasons. But I kind of skipped around some to just like see. Again, like not every episode in my opinion was like a winner. There are a couple duds per season essentially. But it's a lot of episodes. Like you're not gonna miss out because there was one episode that like wasn't your favorite. And it's not even that they were bad, it's just like in my opinion I was like, oh, that wasn't really like, that's not my kind of like scary. I love being scared like to an extent. I still want to be able to like sleep at night. Which, to be honest, I've still had trouble sleeping. If you've been following this, then you'll know I've had trouble sleeping recently. I feel really tired all the time. I'm really tired. But, I think part of that is my own fault at this point if I'm staying up and watching the Yamishibai episodes before I go to bed. So, the nightmares, that's probably on me at this point, but it's pretty bad. But also, like, whatever. It's the season, right? It's Halloween, and then once November hits, maybe the nightmares will go away. Who knows? But each episode has been pretty good. It kind of feels like if you've ever seen someone play or have played a Chilla's Art game, it's kind of like similar to that vibe and that like art style where like the story is more of the focus. And not saying that any of it's like bad, just like the story is definitely the focus, and then there's like a little bit of a visual aid when you're playing the game. Each episode of Yamishibai kind of feels like that. So if you like Chilla's art, at least for the first season, the art changes throughout some of the different seasons because there's different writers and different directors and different artists for the seasons. But if you like Chilla's art games, then definitely check out at least the first season. And the first season seems to be one of the favorites among a lot of people who watched the show. So definitely check that season out if you're interested. But it was really good. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm going to be retelling some of my favorites. And then there's a couple that go along with kind of a through line in the story. So there's not an overarching story really, like per episode. Like you can literally jump around and just watch episodes out of order. Like it doesn't really matter. But there are a couple that it's like, oh, you might want to watch them not necessarily exactly in order, but more in order. I don't know if that makes any sense. The only like through line throughout the story is there's like kind of a little bit of a story about our narrator, who kind of introduces every episode and then is sometimes in the outro of the episodes. The intros and the outros of each season differ a little bit. But yeah, so the only through line is kind of the narrator that's in the story. But let's get started with some of these stories. Our first story is called The Talisman Woman, or Ofuda Ona. Ona just means woman, and Ofuda is a talisman. A young man moved into a new apartment and he noticed a talisman on his ceiling. He was unpacking his stuff, finished for the day, exhausted, laid down on the floor and looked up and saw this talisman on the ceiling. And he thought, that's kind of creepy. Why is that there in this new place I'm moving into? So he takes it down, and as he's taking it down, he notices across the way through his window that there's a woman in an apartment across the street looking at him through his window. It's a little creepy. He's like, that's weird, and he closes the curtains really quick because he's like, oh, what a way to start my new move-in into this new place, right? The next day, he's taking out the trash before he's going to work. As he's taking out the trash, he notices the woman again. She's staring at him again. He quickly drops the trash off and runs off to work. After work, he asks his friend if he would be okay with coming over to his place and helping him unpack because he's got some big stuff to unpack, but also like he's freaked out. There's this woman who keeps watching him. And his friend says, no, sorry, I've got a date with my girlfriend, so I can't. He's like, dude, please. Like, there's this creepy girl watching me from across the street. Like, I'd really like some company. And he's like, nope, sorry, dude. Maybe tomorrow. Okay, whatever. He gets home and he notices his front door is unlocked. Did he leave it unlocked on accident? It is a new place. He's probably pretty frazzled because he's in a new place and going to work in the morning early and had to take the trash out. So, maybe he did forget. He goes inside of his house, lays down exhausted after the day on the floor, looks up at the ceiling again, and there's a talisman again. Weird. Okay. Did he leave it up there? Was there a second one that he didn't notice? Unsure. As he goes to take the talisman down, the woman who had been staring at him from across the street reaches out and stops him. She's in his place. He freaks out, calls the police. The woman gets taken away. As she's being driven off by the police, she's looking at him, staring at him through the back window of the car. And she mouths something to him, but he can't make out what she's saying. Probably some crazy thing. I don't know. She literally broke into his apartment. Like, that's horrifying. After she leaves, after the commotion is all done, he notices that she kind of made a mess in his house. She had shoes on in his house, which is a no-no. We all know is a no-no. You don't wear outside shoes in the house, in the inside house. You can put slippers on, but you don't wear your outside shoes in the house. She left a mess. She trailed like dirt and mud in. He's cleaning up all of her little footsteps, complaining that not only did she break into his house, but she also left a mess. Like, are we serious? He's cleaning up the stains, the mud, the dirt, and as he's doing that, on the ground, he notices a talisman fall from underneath his coffee table. That's weird. Where did it come from? Okay. Stops what he's doing, takes the table, flips it over, and it's covered in tens, hundreds of talismans stuck to the underside of the table. Freaked out even more, and angry at this point, because that woman clearly was leaving these talismans for him for God knows why. He takes all of the talisman and rips them off the table, ripping, shredding them to pieces until they're no more. Finally, his house is clean. There's no more talismans. The woman's in jail. He's safe. He finishes ripping off the last talisman. He's feeling good. And as he looks up from the ground from ripping the talismans, he sees that he's surrounded by spirits, ready to take him. Our next story is called Hair, or Kami in Japanese. And I'm going to explain a little wordplay with that, but after the story. Late one night, an elementary school teacher was working overtime at school, finishing up this school newspaper. She had to write some stuff in so that it could be printed for everyone the next morning. She takes her paper, finished with the day, and all she has to do now is make copies so that way they can go out for all the kids. As she goes to the copy machine, she hears the school bell ringing, which is weird because it's really late at night, so the school bell shouldn't be going off, but it's probably just a malfunction or something. She goes to the copy machine, opens the top, puts the paper in to be copied, closes it, and starts the machine up. It prints the first paper, like the first copy, and she notices it has this really thin black line going down the length of it. And she's unsure of what it was, so she stops the machine, opens the copier, and then goes to take the paper that she'd been copying to see if there was something on it that, like, maybe she made a mistake and she accidentally drew a long line through it. She's gonna have to redo the whole thing. As she takes the paper off to look at it, she sees a face in the copy machine. She drops everything slams shut. She's freaked out. She goes again to check the copy machine, lifts the top, lifts the paper, and there's nothing. She's just imagining things. It's late at night. She was working all day. You know, I can imagine she's exhausted. Puts the paper back in, and there's no thin line or anything on it, so she doesn't know what that was. It was probably just a mistake that the machine made. Closes the top, starts the machine up again, and it's not printing. No one's around. She kicks the machine. Is like, hey, like, no one's gonna see this anyway, so hopefully it doesn't make anything worse. Kicks the machine, and finally it boots up and starts printing again. It prints a copy. She checks it, the test copy, and it's perfect. It's totally fine. No more black lines, so it must have been some weird thing with the machine. Perfect. She sets it to copy and print the rest of the copies that she needs. And as it's printing, these thin lines start to appear again. More and more and more, covering the page with what looks like hair. These thin lines, it looks like hair. And the machine won't stop. She's pressing the buttons, doing everything she can to get the machine to stop printing these copies. One, because it's creepy, and two, like it's got hair on it. She can't hand these out to the kids. Nothing's working. Finally, she goes, okay, I'm going to unplug the machine. She unplugs the machine and it stops. Thankfully. So, she opens the copier, the top of the little lid, looks down, and she sees what looks like this trail of hair move across the top of the machine and down into a drawer underneath the machine. Leaves the top alone and carefully, cautiously opens the drawer. She opens it, and there's nothing. She's seeing things. She's exhausted. It's time for her to go. She's like, okay, all right, it's fine. I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I'm going crazy. I really need to go to bed. She's like, I'll make the copies in the morning. I don't need to do this right now. We can do it later. She grabs her paper that she needs to make the copies of so she can go put it back on her desk to copy in the morning and leave. And then she goes to close the top of the copy machine. And as she does that, there's a girl with long black hair behind the copy machine. Our next story is called... Oh, before I do that, oh my goodness, I totally forgot. So, kami, the reason why I brought it up, kami is the word for paper in Japanese and also the word for hair. So I thought it was fun that they did that with a copy machine paper that needed to be copied and then hair being there. Also, I just find hair kind of gross and creepy sometimes, like loose hair. So that one really got to me. So yes, the next story is called Contradiction. There was a young woman who was asleep in bed late at night, and she gets a phone call. And again, it's really late, pitch black out. It's got to be past midnight at this point. She answers the phone groggy, thinking, who is calling at this hour of the night? And it's her friend on the line, panicked, panting, breathing heavy, and she's freaking out. She's like, oh my gosh, so and she's like, whoa, girl, calm down, take a breath, tell me what's going on, what's happening. And now she's starting to panic because she's like, what's going on with her friend? Like, is something wrong? Her friend continues, me and my boyfriend, we went for a drive and we thought it would be funny to go to that old abandoned hospital that's across town. So we went inside and she's like, girl, the abandoned hospital? Like, that's what you guys did? She's like, yeah. We went inside and I was getting scared and I didn't want to go anymore. But my boyfriend, he wanted to keep going. He thought it was fun to explore and he thought it was funny that I was getting scared. So he kept going further and further and further in. And I kept following him because I didn't want to be left alone. And then he found this locked room. And when he found the locked room, he decided to break into it. And when he broke into it, he went inside. And I didn't go in with him because I was too scared. And when he came out, it was like he wasn't himself anymore. And she's like, okay. What do you mean? Is something wrong with him? Do you need me to call the police? Do you need an ambulance? Like, what do you need? What's going on? What do you need me to do? And her friend is like, I don't know where he went. And she's like, you don't know where he went? Is he okay? And she was like, I don't know. I ran out. I got too scared. I'm scared. Can I come over? I don't know what else to do right now. She's like, okay. Okay. Yes. What do you want me to do? Do you want to call the cops? We can call the cops while you're outside the hospital. You don't have to go in. Like, what do you need? And panic, she's like, no. I want to get out of here. Can I come over? Can I come over to your place? And she's like, yeah, you can come over to my place, I guess. If you feel safer here, then, and maybe you can tell me more about like what happened. And she goes, yeah, it's so dark and painful here. I really want to come over. It's okay, I can come over? And her friend's like, dark and painful? Like, are you okay? Are you sure you don't need an ambulance? And she's like, I can leave? I really can leave? You're sure I can leave? I can leave, right? And her friend is like, I mean, yeah, you can leave. You can come over. And she just hears her other friend on the line giggling. She's like, okay, I guess, I don't know, maybe she's freaked out. She's panicked. She's like, yeah, you're fine. You can come over. And all of a sudden, she hears this knocking at her door. Scares her because she's having this scary conversation with her friend. And through the door, she hears her friend's boyfriend shouting, hey, let me in. Can I come in? And she's like, whoa, what's going on? Is it you? Hello? Like, you're my friend's boyfriend? Hello? And he goes, yeah, something weird happened. Can I talk to you? And she's like, well, what's going on? She doesn't open the door. She's just talking through the door because she's scared because she was hearing from her friend that her boyfriend isn't acting like how he normally would. The boyfriend says through the door, me and your friend went to this abandoned hospital and it was kind of creepy. We thought it'd be fun. But as we were going in, she wanted to keep going in further and further and further, even though I was freaked out and I wanted to leave. She's like, weird, because that's the story that her friend just told her, but that the boyfriend was the one doing all this stuff. And he continues, she went inside, I lost her for a while, and then when I found her again, she was acting different. It was almost like she didn't even have her own face. And her friend is like, what? She's acting different? That's really weird because she said you were acting different. And as they're having this conversation, the line goes dead. She was still on the phone with her friend. The line goes dead. So, did her friend hang up? What happened? We don't know. And the boyfriend says, yeah, I don't know. She's acting really weird. I don't know what to do. Can I come in? Can we talk? And she's like, yeah, okay. She goes over to the door, opens the door. She's like, I'm so sorry. She was just telling me that you were the one who was acting weird. So I was just on the phone with her and she notices that her friend's boyfriend, his face doesn't look like his face either. And he says, so I can leave? I can come in? Our next story is called Tomonari-kun. Kun is just a way to like address typically a boy, like a younger boy. It's like chan or san, like it follows a name. Anyway, and the first kanji character, this is fun. This is just a little fun tidbit. I was looking it up. The first kanji character for the name Tomonari typically means like companion or friend. So I thought that was cute. So our story starts with a high school girl walking home from school, and she passes this group of young boys playing in their apartment complex, their housing complex. And she's like, oh, I've never seen those boys before. But, you know, it's a big housing complex, so it's not odd that she wouldn't have run into every single person who lives there. And she walks past them, and she notices that they're all looking at this dark spot, this dark shadow on the ground. And she asks, oh, that's weird. What are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, we're just playing with Tomonari-kun. And she's like, oh, is that Tomonari-kun? She points to the shadow on the ground. And the boys go, yeah, it's really fun. And he actually says that you should play with us. He thinks that it'd be fun if you play with us too. And she goes, oh, that's nice, but I actually have a lot of homework that I need to get done. So I'm sorry, I actually got to go home. And the boys look really disappointed. And they're like, oh, really? And she goes, yeah, but you know what? I promise I'll play next time. And they go, you promise? And she says, yeah, I promise, whatever, it's fine. She goes home, does her homework. Some time passes. She's going to school, going home. She takes different routes sometimes, you know, just whatever she's feeling. And this time, as she's coming home from school, she passes by the group of boys again. And the boys look at her and they say, oh, you're back. You came back. And she's like, huh? They're like, yeah, Tomonari-kun told us that you would be back today, that you'd come this way today when you were going home. And she goes, oh, yeah, I came this way again. And they go, you're going to play with us today, right? And she's like, oh, no, I have a part-time job that I need to get to. I actually have to go to work. And they go, but you promised. And she thinks, well, I did promise, but sorry, no, I actually have to go to work. And they're pretty upset at that. She leaves for work a little frazzled, a little freaked out, because the boys looked really upset, like disproportionately upset that she wasn't going to play with them. But she goes about her business, goes to work, and it's fine. She comes home later that evening, and as she's untying her shoes, putting them away, going inside, she hears outside her front door, Tomonari-kun, we're here to play. Tomonari-kun, come out. Can we come play? Weird. She opens the door, and that group of boys are all outside her front door, and they say, hey, Tomonari-kun is here. Can we come inside and play? And she's like, what? What are you guys talking? No, Tomonari-kun's not here. And they go, yes, he is. He's right behind you. She looks behind her, and there's a shadow on her ceiling. Freaked. But she's not about to let these boys in, and it's probably all in her head anyway. She goes, no, he's not here. Go, get out, leave. Like, he's not here. Go somewhere else. The boys leave. They go outside, and they're outside her window, looking in to her house. And you hear the boys say, oh, Tomonari-kun's in there. We can see him. Through her window, they can see a shadow on her ceiling. And she says to herself, I'm crazy, right? Tomonari-kun's not real. It doesn't matter. It's fine. And then she hears this noise behind her. It sounds like a faint young boy's voice. And he's saying, you promised. You promised to play. You promised. And the shadow turns into the head of a young boy. His arms come down from the ceiling. He grabs her and pulls her up into the ceiling with him. And the young boys outside, they see this through her window and they say, "Oh, she's finally playing. Tomonari-kun looks so happy. She kept her promise." And the next day, we see the young group of boys playing with Tomonari-kun out in the street. But next to Tomonari-kun is a little shadow, another shadow. And it looks like the outline of a young high school girl. This next story is called Locker. So, a young girl, about middle school age, had this huge crush on one of her seniors, on her senpai. And he was a baseball player and she was a team manager, but he didn't really notice her too much. Going home from school one day, she hears these two girls in front of her talking. And one of the girls says, "Oh, I'm too nervous. I don't think I can tell him I like him." And the other girl turns to her and says, "Oh, well, don't you know about that rumor?" She turns to her friend, What rumor?" "Oh, you know, the rumor that there's this coin locker down by the subway, and if you stick your love's picture in it, the person you love, you stick their picture in it, then your wish will come true and they'll love you back." She goes, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, there's this locker and it's got a doll in it. You stick their picture in and they'll love you." She goes, "Okay, maybe I'll try that." And the girl, the one with the crush on her senpai, is walking behind them and overhears all of this. And she thinks, well, it's probably not real, right? But it doesn't hurt to try. So she takes a picture of her senpai, goes down to the bank of lockers, but she doesn't know which locker it is. Is it a specific one? Is it any locker? Does it matter? She decides to pick locker number 10 because 10 is the number on her senpai's jersey. So it must be a lucky number, right? She opens the locker and there is indeed a doll inside, but it's kind of creepy. Like it scares her a little bit when she opens it. She wasn't expecting to actually find a doll, and I don't know, there's something off about the doll, but it's there. It's the one from the rumor, right? She takes her senpai's picture, puts it in the locker, and prays to the doll. "Please, please grant my love. Thank you so much." Closes the locker and leaves. The next day, her friend asks, "Oh, hey, you want to go hang out after school? There's a cafe downtown that just opened." And she's like, "No, sorry, I've actually got something to do. Maybe next time?" Her friend says, "Okay, see you tomorrow." The girl goes back to the coin lockers, opens her locker number 10. The doll is inside, but the picture's gone. Weird, but does that mean it worked? As she's turning to go back home, she runs into her senpai. It must be working, right? It must be working. She's like, oh, flustered, and, "Oh, senpai, what are you doing here?" And he goes, "Oh, I just had something to do. What are you doing here?" She's kind of shy, doesn't really want to answer. And he goes, "Actually, I'm here to grant one of my wishes. Is that why you're here too?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, well, whose picture did you put in?" And she doesn't want to answer because she doesn't know if he likes her back or not, you know? So she doesn't answer. She just kind of like, "Oh," and to brush it off, she decides to change the direction of the conversation, and she says, "Oh, yeah, well, I put the picture in the locker with the doll, but the picture's gone. The doll's still there, but I don't know what happened to the picture." And he looks at her, horrified, and he says, "The locker with the doll? No, that's not right." She says, "What?" He goes, No, the locker with the doll is..." And before he can respond, his body starts contorting, squishing, contorting. He's screaming in agony, and she's shocked. What's happening? His body contorts, squished, further and further and further, until it's small enough to fit into the locker, and it slams into the locker, and the door slams shut. Locker number 10, his jersey number. And then the girl hears the doll laughing faintly in the distance. Our next story is one of the stories that is actually part of the overarching story. Every single story starts with the narrator, which is a man with a mask on. He's in a park with a bunch of kids running around. Some of them are on swings, and he's got his little setup for his Yamishibai, well, his Kamishibai. They don't know their scary stories yet. And he beckons for everyone to come and listen to his stories, just like I did at the beginning of the episode. Yotterashai mitterashai Yamishibai no jikan da yo. It just means come look, come see, come hear. It's time for scary stories. And yeah, so every episode starts with this man with a mask on, our narrator, starting off the story and beckoning people to come and listen. And in the third season, the opening, like I said, some of the openings, intros and things for this were different depending on the season. The third season, instead of this masked man calling people in, it actually starts with, we see a young boy drawing on a sketch pad in the park, and he's singing this creepy little song saying, friends from this side come to the other sides, friends from the other side come to this side. And he's drawing. And the last episode of this third season is our next story, called Drawings. And our protagonist of this story is the little boy who was in the intro of this season. A teacher, a young new teacher, enters a new town for a teaching job. She's doing her student teaching before she can become a full-fledged teacher. And she's walking through a park, sees children playing, and she sees this one young boy by himself, drawing in a sketch pad. And she's wondering, is he okay? Does he need friends? What's going on? She walks over to him and says, hey, are you like drawing? What are you drawing? And he doesn't respond. She's like, are you okay? Can I see what you're drawing? And he doesn't respond. And so she thinks, okay, I'll just leave him alone. He wants to be left alone. It's fine. The next day, she goes to her first day on the job, student teaching. She's introduced to all the kids in the class. The teacher says, hey, better be nice to her. She's learning how to be a teacher, and she's here to help teach and learn with you guys. The kids are all excited. She's this pretty young woman. And the teacher says, do you guys have any questions for her? And one of the young boys raises his hand, giggling, and he goes, do you have a boyfriend? And she laughs. And she goes, well, what do you think? And the kids in the class answer, I think she does. No, I don't think she does. And then one boy says, well, she came from Tokyo, so I don't think she does, because they're in the countryside. And another boy goes, actually, she could be in a long-distance relationship, so maybe she does have a boyfriend. And she just laughs and laughs. And she notices in the back corner, one of the kids is quiet, not really joining in on all the talking, and looking out the window. And it's the boy from the park that she saw the day before. She goes, oh, he must be in my class. After the bell rings, school's over, she's waving goodbye to all the kids. Nice to meet you, excited for tomorrow, see you guys in class tomorrow. And the young boy walks by and she stops him and says, hey, you were the boy who was drawing in the park the other day, right? You must be in my class. It's nice to meet you. And he just kind of ignores her. And she says, well, I noticed you like drawing a lot. Do you think you could draw me someday? And he looks at her and says, that would be boring. Why would I draw you? And he walks away. And she's like, okay, that was kind of rude, but all right, whatever. She's walking home from work. She must have stayed overtime because it's really late. And she even says to herself, man, I think I was working too hard for my first day on the job. And as she's walking home, she sees the little boy in the middle of the street sitting. And it's late and he's alone and he's got a sketch pad and he's drawing. She's like, what is he doing by himself? And she looks ahead of him, and there's this man in the phone booth in front of him. But it's not a man. It was a man, but now it looks like a monster. There's a phone coming out of his neck where his head should be. It's horrifying. And the little boy, he's laughing and drawing. She hides behind a corner, shocked, wondering, there's there's something wrong with that little boy. As the school year goes on, weeks pass. She continues to follow the little boy. There's something off about him. And she follows him night after night. And every night he goes out with his sketch pad, drawing, laughing, and watching these monsters form in front of him. She's horrified, but it's like a train wreck. She can't stop watching. She can't stop following. Can't stop her curiosity about who is this little boy? Is he drawing the pictures and they're coming to life? Does he draw the pictures after he sees them happen? Finally, he's seen without his sketchbook. He leaves the classroom to go to the bathroom or something after school. His sketchbook is left on his desk. So she goes and grabs the sketchbook to look through it, and she finds these horrifying monsters. And one of the monsters is in the park that he's drawn, holding these 3 children. And she remembers it's the same 3 children she saw in the park that first day she saw him. Those children have been missing since that day. She drops the sketchpad, terrified, wondering if he's the reason those kids are missing. And then he hears from behind him, "Oh, Sensei." She turns. It's the little boy. He says, "You know what? You're much more interesting now than when I first met you." And she's scared. And he looks at her and says, "So, I think I'll draw you now." Monsters appear behind her, and the little boy's face disintegrates to reveal a mask. The same mask as our original narrator. And then the episode ends, and we see the narrator in a new outro, and he's beckoning the children to come and listen to the stories. And that cuts. And then he's beckoning the children to come, and we see the same thing repeat. But this time the children, they look a little deformed. And then it cuts. And then it repeats again. "Yotterashai, mitterashai, Yamishibai no jikan da yo." And then it cuts. And the children look even more horrifying than they did before. "Yotterashai, mitterashai, Yamishibai." We see the children. They're monsters now. Full-blown monsters. And it cuts. "Yotterashai, mittera." It cuts. "Yotterashai, mi." It cuts. The children getting more and more terrifying. More and more grotesque as it cuts and cuts and cuts. Until the final one. And it's not the narrator anymore. Or it is. But instead of his adult form as we'd seen him before, it's the little boy with the mask on. "Yotterashai, mitterashai, Yamishibai no jikan da yo." Our next story is called The Fourth Man. I'm not 100% sure if this is true for all East Asian culture or multiple. I know for sure that for Japanese it's this. The number 4 in Japan is considered an unlucky number because there's different ways to pronounce numbers because you say them in different ways if you're counting different things. But one of the ways to pronounce the number 4 is the same way that you say the word for death in Japanese. And so 4 is a very unlucky number. So this episode, the story, it's an episode in the show, but this is all one podcast. So this story is called The Fourth Man. There's a girl, middle school age, and she's cleaning up her classroom after school. In Japan, typically 1 or 2 students is assigned each week or a certain amount of days to clean the classroom. It's their classroom duty, and everyone has to take a turn, right, to keep the classroom clean. She's wiping down the chalkboard, tidying things up, picking up trash, and she overhears 2 of her classmates talking to her teacher after school. And the 2 girls are talking to the teacher, and they go, "Sensei, have you heard of the handshake men?" And the teacher says, "No, I haven't. What's the handshake men?" And the girls go, "Well, It's this story, this scary tale that apparently if you're walking at night by yourself, or it's just late at night, you'll run into this creepy old man and he'll ask to shake your hand. And the teacher goes, all of a sudden? And the kids say, yeah, all of a sudden. He just comes out of nowhere. And the teacher's like, okay, well, don't shake their hand. You shouldn't talk to strangers. Run away. And they say, no. You can't not shake his hand. And she says, why? What happens if you say no? And the kids say, well, if you say no, he says that you're bad. And then he crushes you into a meatball. And she laughs and she says, oh, really? I would just want to not shake his hand. They're like, yeah, but you have to. And she goes, oh, okay. And then they say, but actually there's more than one. She goes, there's more than one. And they say, yeah. And you're never supposed to shake the fourth man's hand. And she asks, well, why? And they say, if you shake his hand, he'll bite it off. She goes, he'll bite your hand off? Yeah, he'll bite it off. And they kind of giggle. And she goes, well, don't stay out too late then. And I hope you don't run into any strange people on your way home. Get home safe. The kids run off. The girl's finished up cleaning at this point. She's packing up her bags when she hears the end of the story. She takes her stuff, walks out of the classroom, and says to herself, what a dumb story. Why would anyone say that? It's stupid. She picks up her little sister, and they walk home. She's a little freaked, but it's fine. They get home, they've had dinner with their family, and then they go do their homework. She gets a knock on her door, and it's her little sister. Her little sister comes in and says, hey, I'm really sorry, but I left my homework notebook at school. And her sister sighs and says, okay, let's go get it. It's late, but, they're just going back to the school. It's just down the street. 15 minutes. They walk down the street, hand in hand, go to her little sister's classroom, grab the notebook, and as the older sister turns to exit the classroom, she runs into a man. And the little sister goes, oh, hey. The older sister looks at her little sister and she goes, it's the janitor. And he goes, what are you guys doing here so late? And she goes, oh, sorry. Yeah, I left my notebook here, so I had to come get it. The janitor says, okay, well, go home now, be on your way, and get home safely, okay? It's dark and it's late. And the little sister says, okay, thank you. And they walk out. And as they're walking home, hand in hand, the little sister turns to her older sister and says, why were you so scared earlier? And she goes, oh, he just appeared so suddenly that it scared me. And she goes, oh, okay. She's not going to tell her little sister the scary story she heard at school and say that's why she's freaked out. She's embarrassed and she doesn't want to scare her little sister. They're walking home, and on their walk home, they run into another man. This old man walking down the street by himself, mumbling something. He gets closer and closer and closer, and they can hear what he's saying now. He's saying, what are these kids doing out here so late? It's just a drunk old man walking in the street. His face is flushed. The older sister breathes out a sigh of relief. And they walk. She goes, ignore that man. He's just drunk. And the little sister's okay. And as they continue walking, they walk past another man on the side of the street underneath a lamppost with his hand outstretched. And when they walk by, he says, will you shake my hand? And the younger sister's scared. The older sister recalls what the girl said and thinks to herself, I don't want anything to happen to my little sister. It's just the first man. I'll shake his hand and nothing's going to happen. She shakes the man's hand and he smiles. And his mouth looks unusually large, full of teeth. But he lets go. And she walks on and she tells her little sister, do not look back. Don't look back. Let's go. They're speed walking now because she's scared. She notices up ahead there's a police station. She thinks to herself, oh, thank goodness. If anything happens, I'll just run into the police station. We'll be safe there. As they get closer to the police station, they notice a man in the front, blocking the front door. And it's a policeman. But he has his hand outstretched. And as they walk by, he says, will you shake my hand? She shakes his hand. And then they continue forward. And she says, don't look back. And she's faster now, almost running, until she is running. And she tells her little sister, let's go. We have to get home. It's 2. She can't get to the 4th. As she's running, turning a corner, she runs into a man. She gets up and she looks at the man, and the man says, will you shake my hand? His hand outstretched. It's the 3rd one. She can't do any more after this. She shakes his hand and she runs, her little sister behind her. But then she notices her hand behind her, it feels empty. Did her sister run away? Did she get lost? And she's terrified. Is her sister going to run into the 4th man? And if her sister shakes his hand, will her hand get bitten off? And she's calling out for her sister. Hey, where are you? We have to go. Are you okay? Did you get lost? Where are you? And she's running. Her hand is still outstretched behind her. And she hears, Onesan, which is older sister. Onesan, wait. She feels a hand grab her hand. Thank God. And they're almost home. They're so close. And her sister says, Onesan, wait. She turns around to look at her sister. The hand holding hers, it's not her little sister. It's a man. He smiles. His grin growing, his mouth opening. This is our last story. This story is called The 100th Story. And it actually was the, I believe, 100th episode of the show. So it's pretty far up there in the seasons. It was the final episode of the 10th season. And I think it's the 100th episode, actually. And I don't know if they were planning to end the show after 10 seasons, but then they ended up doing an 11th season, so. But the ending was cool. So this story is called The 100th Story. And before I go into the actual story, I'm going to give some backstory, which is there's this, I guess you could call it a ritual, called Hyakumonogatari Kairankai. Hyakumonogatari means 100 stories, 100 series. Hyaku is 100. Monogatari is series. So 100 series. Hyakumonogatari. And Kairankai means scary stories or ghost stories. So back in the olden days, the way that they would tell ghost stories, one of the traditional ways to do this, was you would have 3 rooms. Because of the way that buildings were at the time in Japan, it would be 3 rooms in a row. In the first room, you'd gather all your people, and that's where you would tell the stories. The second room is like a traveling room. You pass through the second room to get to the third room. In the third room are 100 candles and a small mirror. Before the whole thing starts, you light all of the candles, and you place the mirror on a table in the room or on the floor. As you tell the stories throughout the night, once you finish a story, you get up, walk through the second room into the third room, you blow out one of the candles, you look into the mirror, and then you walk back through the second room to the first room. And it goes on, and each person takes turns telling stories, blowing the candles out, walking back into the room. And once you get to the last candle, something is supposed to happen. Whether you're calling spirits forward, whether you're letting the spirits get their energy out and you're sending them all into the third room, there's kind of different interpretations of it. But something's supposed to happen after you tell the 100th story and you blow that last candle out. A group of friends, high school age, go to the abandoned school in town. One of the boys starts setting up all these candles and asks the others to help him. They're lighting candles, they're getting them all stacked up, set up, standing up, ready to go. And one of the girls in the group says, "What are we doing?" And the older boy says, "We're going to do a hyakumonogatari." And she goes, "What is that?" And the other girl goes, "You joined us without even knowing what it is?" And she was like, "Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't have anything else to do." The older boy explains. It's the way that they used to tell stories back in the olden days. You light 100 candles and you tell ghost stories, 100 of them. And after each ghost story, you blow one of the candles out. And after the last one, something's supposed to happen. And the girl goes, "Well, what's supposed to happen?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know. A ghost shows up or something." And she's like, "Oh, okay." There's one boy in the group and he doesn't seem as interested in doing this. He's a little timid, maybe a little scared even. Everyone's setting up. They're like, "Hey, help us set up." So he helps set the candles up. After everything's done, all the candles are lit. The boy says, "Well, I don't think I even know any scary stories. And they go, that's fine, just listen for now. So they each take turns telling scary stories. One boy says, and when he moved in, there was a talisman on the ceiling. And then another girl says, and when she opened the copier, there was a face inside. And then someone else says, and Tomonari-kun took her to play with him because she promised. And then another says, but when she put the picture in the locker, the doll laughed. And then another one says, and when she turned to look, it wasn't her little sister holding her hand. It was the fourth man. And on and on and on. We hear them telling the stories that we as the viewer have been hearing throughout this whole series. And they finally get to the 99th story. And they turn to the boy who was kind of reluctant to join them. And they say, hey, we know you said you don't really have any scary stories, but we've been doing all the work here and you should tell at least one. And he goes, okay, but before I tell the 99th story, I want to make sure of something. And they're like, okay, what? And he says, actually, I've played this game before. And they go, really? You've done a Hyakumonogatari before? And he says, yeah, but it didn't turn out right. And they say, well, what do you mean? He says, well, I was telling the 99th story, but when I blew the candle out, I accidentally blew out the 100th candle with it. And the guy who was supposed to tell the 100th story, he disappeared. Everyone's freaked out. And they're like, oh my gosh. And he says, so are you sure you want me to tell the 99th story? And they go, I mean, we're already at 99. We're not going to back out now, right? They all look around. They're like, yeah, we're not going to back out now. Just tell the story. And then he kind of smiles. And he goes, actually, that was the 99th story. And actually, that wasn't the end of my story. They kind of look around. And he goes, after I blew out the 99th and 100th candles, and my friend disappeared, I heard him whisper in my ear, I'll see you after another 100 stories. And they're like, what? What does that mean? And he goes, well, if you want to know what it means, why don't you just ask him yourself? And they turn, and behind them is the friend. But it's not just his friend. It's the man in the mask, our narrator. And he looks at all of the kids and he says, this is the story of the dreadful experience of what happened to some people after 100 tales were told. And as the series ends, the outro for this episode, it's similar to the other outros in this season. It's the man, the masked man, our narrator, on a stage, and we see him take his mask off and put it face down on the stage, and he walks off the stage, seemingly finished with his stories. But at the end of this last episode, after he walks off, we see the mask flip over on its own, as if to say, I'm not finished quite yet. And then, of course, there's the 11th season now, so obviously he wasn't finished telling stories yet. But that was the end of it. I don't have a lesson for this episode. I just wanted to tell some spooky stories. If you like scary stories, and you have access to this show, it's on Crunchyroll, but you can probably find it in other places too. Again, it's called Theater of Darkness, Yamishibai. Go check it out if you can, and if you like scary stories, it's perfect for Halloween. They're really short. You could have it playing on TV in the background at a party or something if you wanted to, probably. Or, like, you're not going to get interrupted by trick-or-treaters because they're so short, so you'll probably, you could just pause it, wait for the next one to come around, It's fun. I think they're really fun. But, yeah, no lesson in this episode. I just wanted to tell some spooky stories. Unless you got a lesson from one of those stories. Maybe don't go out too late at night. Maybe don't make promises that you can't keep. Trust your intuition and don't explore spooky places, maybe. But yeah, thank you for enjoying and spending this time with me. And if you are going out for Halloween, stay safe. Keep an eye out for yourself. Keep an eye out for others. It's a fun time, but it's also a time where it's just it's good to be cautious, I think. But yeah, thank you for sticking with me, and I really hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, evening, weekend, week, and I will see you next time. Love, Mikaela. Bye.